This weekend is the 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time. I think there's 35 weeks of Ordinary Time, and when we think of like Lent, we're preparing for Jesus' death and resurrection. We think of the Sacred Triduum. We think of the actual redemption of all of humanity. We think of Easter, celebrating the resurrection. We think of Advent, preparing for something. We think of Christmas, celebrating the birth. We sometimes miss out on the point of ordinary time because that's actually the most of the church year. On top of Jesus doing all those really fantastic things, there is also just an ordinary part of his life. For the first 30 years of his life, it didn't necessarily look all that different from everybody else's life. And it was only a very small part of his life that he did everything that saved all of humanity. So the vast majority of his life, was kind of doing what everybody else does. And so we can fall into, I think it's a little bit of American mindset. I don't know if other countries do this the same way that we do, but we're so very blessed in so many different ways that we just assume that we're owed some sort of goodness. But we don't necessarily see that in the readings this weekend. Right? The gospel is a difficult gospel. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Right? We hear in the second reading from St. Paul's letter to the Romans, we think of baptism. We oftentimes, envision a child being baptized, and he immediately ties it to death. And then we hear the first reading of this woman of prominence who makes a bedroom for Elisha in their house so he can just stop by all the time, and then he rewards her with a son. And we could think that this reading actually doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the readings because we don't understand the whole story. I think it's a very beautiful story. In all the readings this weekend, I would say it deals with some difficult things. That the ordinary part of human life isn't always easy and isn't always glamorous. So I want to go through the first reading tonight, or this morning. So I think there's a reason why the church doesn't give the whole reading, because it could be confusing and difficult to process. It's also a longer one. We're not going to talk about every single line. So we hear, it starts in, this is second book of Kings. I referenced a story from second book of Kings last week. This is a different story. Chapter 4, it starts on verse 8. And again, it talks of Elisha. Elisha is the disciple of Elijah. And Elijah, just a few chapters ago, has ascended into heaven on the fiery chariot. And so now Elisha, his disciple, is the main prophet, and he is the holy man of God that's walking around. So this woman of prominence gets to know him and asks for him to be a part of their regular life because of that, because he's a holy man. And so we skip a few verses and we get to the next few lines here, verses 14 through 16a. And Elisha's trying to reward her with something good for their generosity. And so they have this conversation back and forth about this son. So they both are getting on in years, and they do not have a son in this time period. If you didn't have a son, you didn't have anyone to take care of the family. And so he's offering her this baby son. So this is verses 16a, so just the very first part of it. We missed out on the second part of it. So Elisha promised, this time next year you'll be cradling a baby son. She said, "My Lord, you are a man of God. Do not deceive your servant." Right, so the part that we skip over in verses 11 to 14 is this woman of prominence revealing how blessed she really is. Everything's fine. She has land, she has family, she has, they're well off. They don't need anything. They're fine. And so he says, "What about a son, though?" And her mood changes pretty quickly. Right, she goes from being fine to, "My Lord, you are a man of God. Do not deceive your servant." Or in other words, don't be messing around with me on this one. Everything is fine, but you're right. There is something that we are missing. Don't be joking about this. That time next year, they have a child. It says, one day the boy went out with his father to the reapers. In other words, they went out to farm. And the boy says to his father, so the boy's a few years older at this time. He says, my head, my head. Right? He has a severe headache. And the father says that the same thing that every other father in all of the history of time says, carry him to his mom. The servants pick him up and take him back to his mom. The mom takes the child into her arms. And as they're sitting there with the child on her lap, at the time of noon, the child dies. Right, so she's immediately changed tone. Don't be messing around about this. You're right, my life is fine, but there is still something more that I can have. And now in her arms, this child, this great gift, has gone. So she goes upstairs and lays the boy on the bed of the man of God that we talked about in the first few verses of this. Realizing that the child's dead and she needs to do something, she decides she's going to take the baby boy to the man of God, to Elisha. And so she's carrying the baby boy out the door, and her husband says, where are you going? And she says, I'm going to go see the man of God. And he responds, but it's not our normal time to go see the man of God. Is everything all right? And in this translation it says, she says, it's fine. Now, husbands, you might have heard that before too. The context of it actually reveals that it's probably not the same exact way that your wife might have said it to you. In other translation, she'll say, all is well. And so she's not revealing to her husband that something terrible has happened. She goes up her way. On her way, she gets stopped by somebody else. She again says, all is well. She finally gets to Elisha. And she walks in and says, did I ask my Lord for a son? Did I not say, do not mislead me? Right, you can hear the pain and anguish in her voice. I knew there was still one more thing missing, and I wasn't even asking for it, but yet you brought this up. And now I have an even greater pain than when I didn't have it at all. It says Elisha, that they eventually reach the house, and they go up and put the baby boy in Elisha's room on the bed. He goes in and he closes the door on both of them, and he prayed to the Lord. This is going to sound a little bit odd, but only because we hear it in American ways. It says, then he, Elisha, laid the child on the bed. Then Elisha lays down on the child on the bed. So Elisha's laying down on top of the baby, of the boy who's deceased. Placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes upon the eyes, his hands upon the hands. Again, this might sound inappropriate to us, but it wouldn't have been inappropriate for them. And in every time they depict this, actually, in art, they always depict the child's arms out as like this, and Elisha's arms are also out, grasping the child's hand. So it looks like a cross. And he begins to breathe into the boy, and the boy's flesh becomes warm, it says. The boy sneezes 7 times and opens his eyes. Elisha calls to the woman, the mom. She comes in, and Elisha says to her, take your son. She came and fell at his feet and did him homage, and then took her son and went home. So again, this reading actually fits in with the rest of the readings actually quite well. Right, in the ordinary part of her life, it got better, and then it got more difficult. I think it's a lie for us to try to act like everything is always fine, everything is always good. Right? All of us know that that's not true, that there are difficult parts of life. No matter where you are in life, there's always difficult parts. I recently was connected with a family that I knew from a previous assignment of mine. And it's this unique thing that priests come in the middle of a few years of people's lives, and then they leave. And so you learn oftentimes the story afterwards, and then you leave at some point, and over time you kind of learn the rest of the story, maybe. So I got connected with a family that I knew at a previous assignment, and I kind of got to hear the next part of the story that I wasn't around for. The story that happened before I met the family, Mom and Dad got married at some point years ago, and were desirous to be very open to life and have a lot of kids. And for whatever reason, they struggled to have any kids. They had a few miscarriages, but also just generally struggled with infertility. And almost giving up, they eventually found out that they were with child, and the child was healthy enough that it was going to come to term. But the doctor knew pretty early on that the child was going to be severely mentally handicapped and was going to never really, develop intellectually. Was always going to need to be cared for, and was never going to be able to live on their own, and probably was not going to live really that long. So they gave birth to this baby boy. We'll call this baby boy Frankie. And Mom and Dad cherished Frankie and did everything they could for Frankie. Mom stopped working so that she could be home and care for her son every hour of every day. Dad luckily owned the business that he worked at, and so he could dictate his hours and whatnot, was make sure that he was there when Frankie got up in the morning, made sure that he was there for breakfast and lunch and dinner, would oftentimes work very late into the night after Frankie went to bed. And really kind of just giving themselves to being good parents to Frankie. 6 years later, they found out they were having another child. We'll call this boy Jeffy. Jeffy was a healthy baby boy. And early on in Jeffy's life, Frankie, at the age of, I think it was 12, he passed away. The family knew this was going to happen from the moment they found out that Frankie was not going to develop intellectually. So it was not something that came out of nowhere. But it was still very tragic and very difficult. When I came into the story, Jeffy, the little boy, the second boy, was into junior high already. And so it had been a number of years since Frankie had died. And the dad would say things like, what I would give to one more time get to clean up after his mess. What I would give to one more time, get to clean up his throw up. What I would give for one more time to just hear him giggle. It was beautiful to hear. Mom and Dad had different reactions to the same scenario. By the time I arrived, the mom had become very much a recluse in the house and very infrequently left the house. Didn't do a whole lot in public or anything like that. And Dad did his best to stay very involved in Jeffy's life. What I found out just a while ago, a few weeks ago, when I connected with this family again, was that Jeffy, the boy, had graduated from high school already. He had actually got whatever that's called, where you are the valedictorian. He was the smartest in his class or whatever. Got a very special offer to go to a university for a unique degree. After a few years of being there, realized he really wanted to go into this field, dedicated the rest of his school time to doing that, eventually got a doctorate in it, and is now out east working at some fancy think tank thing. Dad actually sold the business and moved out there, and it now lives just down the street from his son. And the son has now married and has a child. Dad helps care for that child every chance he gets. Dad is around for everything. Every time the parents need a date night, he's the one who takes care of the baby. Mom's still at their original home and is still very much struggling. Mom went out for the wedding, arrived the morning of the wedding, flew out the morning of the wedding, and came back just the next day. Mom went out for the baptism and came back and has only seen her grandson like twice. Right, we see two different people who experience life, and they have different responses. Again, I think it's wrong for us to think that everything is fine, everything is good, and there aren't difficult parts. And I think sometimes we think, oh, I'm Christian, I'm faithful, I go to church on Sunday. God has to respond by giving me everything I want, and everything has to be all right. But it's just not true. Some of us are in the middle of the difficulty part of ordinary life. Some of us are in the aftermath of the difficult part of ordinary parts of life. Some of us are getting ready for it. But regardless, ordinary parts of human life have difficulties and setbacks and death and dying. So I don't know where you're at individually, and I don't know what part of the story all of you are in right now. But we're not alone in it. There is no Easter Sunday without a Good Friday. That was a line that Fulton Sheen used to say all the time. There is no Easter Sunday without a Good Friday. There is no resurrection without death first. Right? We hear in this first reading from the second book of Kings that this woman didn't realize that she could love more, and then she experienced a greater type of love, and then that love was taken from her. Imagine how she held that child walking home from Elisha's house. Still a greater type of love was experienced. If you're in that difficult time right now, there is still a greater type of love that God wants to share with you. Know that you are not alone, and know that the resurrection is still coming.